How you doing, man? So stoked.
I'm doing well. How are you?
It's been a hectic Friday, man. For some reason, everybody decided to record today. We've had...
Gotta get that last one in before September starts.
Man, maybe. I don't know. It's like we had 3 sessions this morning, and then two more are coming.
Wow.
And they're like, we need them tomorrow. And we're like, nope, you will get them next week. Or you can pay $200 extra and we'll expedite it. No, that's awesome. I'm super excited to finally chat, man.
How's it going, Joe?
Likewise. Yeah, what's going on?
Nice seeing you.
Likewise.
Did Brian responded to you? Responded back or no? You haven't heard anything?
He has not yet.
What, Brian?
Little Brian.
Oh.
Yeah. It's like they don't
communication is interesting.
With him specifically, yes. Well, anyways, they're supposed to record here later, so I'll let him know for sure. But yeah, I don't know if you've checked out the show. If you haven't, it's okay. No,
it's just
hard
chaos.
feelings.
Total chaos.
Total chaos.
Super.
Yeah, no, I checked out. I listened to an episode, I think a while back when we first talked about coming on.
Cool. Awesome.
Cool.
Well, super curiosity based. We can point the conversation in whatever direction you feel is better for you and your business. So obviously under the content is profit, but
yeah,
I think
last time we talked about doing the angle for this one being processes.
Sweet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then maybe after a call, we dig deeper into the promotion, the sponsors and stuff like that. Maybe we can do another episode about that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Let's do it. Oh, that looked cool.
Thanks.
You got the lower thirds?
I got some lower thirds, and I don't know if I set this page up yet. I did. If people go to podcastworkflows.com/profit, they'll get like a free automation database from me.
Oh, cool.
Nice,
Are you running this through Ecamm?
I am.
Awesome.
Wait, is it podcast or podcasts?
Singular podcast workflows.
Oh, workflows. I put it. Awesome. I'm gonna put it on the notes here real quick.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, I think on our end, I think that's good. We have the notes here. Joe, any question on your side? We're recording locally here too, so the final product gotta be a little bit different. You're gonna see Fonzie's boogers, but that's the only difference. And then
you can what?
We're gonna see your boogers with the camera. The camera's there.
What do you mean my boogers? I don't know what you're talking about, dude.
8K black magic or red.
We wish. We just had one of them just overheated in the last session, so we're like,
dang.
We might be looking.
We're like living at the edge.
At the edge, yeah, going crazy. Sweet. Well, I'm just.
Do you want me to record? Do you want me to record locally?
I mean, sure.
Why not? That'd be cool.
Yeah. Perfect.
He's like, doop. He's ready. 5 cameras set up. We're gonna get all the awesome angles.
Yeah.
Cinematic B-roll.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have. Do I have something back here?
Do you have like a slider?
Yeah. Got a little back camera behind me.
Nice.
That's awesome.
That's like the gaming streamer setup out there.
Yeah.
I love it.
All right, well, let's get rolling. It's going to be super organic, and then Joe will do an intro right after that. But Joe, welcome to Content's Profit. We've been trying to get this in the books for a long time. The second that we connected on Podmatch Elite, I was like, we need you in our life because time is of the essence, right? And especially if you have 2 kids like I do. Fonzie, you experienced that at some point in your life.
At some point.
I'm like, give me more time. And so, Joe, man, like you're incredible. You're an expert in the podcasting field, especially on how be so effective with, the processes and all this. And, I think we can nerd out for like 4 hours straight just talking about this stuff. So welcome to the show, man. I'm so stoked.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm psyched to talk to you guys. Obviously, I love talking about this. I have 3 kids, so as you guys know, time is time is of the essence, as you said. So yeah, I'm really excited to nerd out about this.
Yeah. So I don't know, Fonz, if you have any comments, but
I mean, I have a lot of notes because I've talked to Joe before. You know, we were like, yeah, let's just jump on a quick 15-minute conversation, and then 45 minutes later, we're like, this is awesome. You know, we have a book call with him for ourselves, so I can attest to Joe's expertise. But you know, we'll probably dive back at some point into some of your story, but you've been podcasting for a while, 2012, right? That is OG status. You have been in the game for a very long time. And then 2016, you kind of like move and you decided to start another podcast because in a way you kind of told me that you were also lonely, right? And you're like, you know, maybe podcast is like my way to meet more people. And after that, you started kind of like developing your processes. You know, you got like sponsorship even before you launched that podcast. So I'm curious, right? From 2012, 2016, and obviously now 2024, there's been a lot of changes, right? Lots of people coming into the industry. What has been some of the biggest changes you've seen in terms of how people have produced their podcast, right? From maybe 2012, which I don't know, maybe was just actually probably sticking a lot of technology together, and now you have a lot of tech that helps you, but I feel like a lot of people are extremely overwhelmed with the processes and they still take a long time to do their thing. So what is that contrast that you've seen throughout these ages?
Yeah, I think there's been a few. Well, first of all, great question. I think there's been a lot of technological advances, obviously, because we're talking 12 years here. But when I first started, the way that we would record is we'd get on a Skype call and we used this app called Ecamm call recorder, right? Like pour one out for Ecamm call recorder, and that's how we would do it. And I would. Not in 2012. In 2012, it was basically just like me and my friends talking about things. You know, it was like every podcast was like white guys talking about something. And so, but in 2016, I had grown a little bit by then, and I had gone on a few podcasts where they had me use QuickTime to record my side of the audio. So we would still get on Skype, and we would use Ecamm call recorder as the backup, but I sent instructions to my guest on how to record their side of the audio so that we got that pristine audio. And now we don't really need to do that, right? We've got tools like Riverside, which we're recording in right now, and some other ones. I still always record a backup because I'm very worried about losing stuff, but I mean, that's gotten so much easier both for podcasters and guests, right? They don't have to manage as much as that. And then similarly, there has been this explosion of, I'll call them no-code tools, right? I was a developer in a previous life. My first podcast, or my second podcast, I guess, my flagship podcast, we'll say, was me talking to fellow developers for a long time. And I wrote a bunch of my own code for my first podcast website to do some things automatically. But now there are tools like Zapier and Make and even like Notion and Airtable have their own built-in automations, though. I wouldn't call what Notion has built-in automation tools. But the fact of the matter is that we can do a lot more without having to write and support code.
Yeah, I think.
Do I sense some beef with Notion out here?
Yeah, totally.
I am lover number one of Notion, just so you know. By the way, and I love it.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I love Notion. This is like, so I left Airtable for Notion because I thought that Notion had better or maybe more user-friendly tools for teams, and like my VA is getting in there, right? My editor gets in there sometimes. But I loved Airtable's automation tools. They were actual automation tools. Notion rolled out something that they called automation and then decided like, oh wait, AI is a thing. So
they moved
we're going to
AI real quick. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, Okay, for example, can I soapbox here for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll do like a tech zone. All right, tech zone.
Joe's kvetch corner over here. So I have two Notion databases, right? One is my CRM, right, where I manage all of my leads for people who are coming in through my coaching form.
Yeah.
I have another one for current coaching clients. And that's like where I put their notes and all of our videos, and I usually share that with them. When I mark somebody as like one or like converted to client, I change their status in the CRM Notion database. I would love if their information got copied over to the current coaching client's Notion database. Yeah. But you can't automate anything with dynamic information. So like you have to like hard code everything, which means that if I said Luis converted, I'd have to hard code your name, right? And then if I did it again for Fonzie later, it would still be Luis's data going over there. And I'm just like, so I had to build a Zapier or a link inside of Notion. I had to build a Zapier's app to connect two Notion databases. If I have to do that, you don't have automation tools built in. Right? If I can't even connect Notion to Notion.
Come on, Mark from Notion, help us out. No.
Don't worry, we'll make sure to clip this and send it to them so they get their stuff together.
Dude, Joe, I love this, right? Because I think we have 6 levers, right? That we've been like talking about it all the time, and the last one is operations, right? When people get into content creation in general, like the perception that we capture for a lot of people starting here in the studio or in general is like I just turn the camera on and I say my message, right? But then there's a aftermath of that. It's like, okay, if I need to edit this clip, where do I edit the thing? Where do I manage the volume of the content that I'm creating? Where is it saved? Where do I transfer it? If I hire a team, where does that go? And all these things, right? That people don't even imagine at the second that they just want to put their message out there, right? Like, for example, we have people just starting today, amazing couple. And one of the initial questions is like, what do I wear in my episode? You know, what's if I'm doing 2 episodes in a row, do I change t-shirts, right? Like that's a worry, right? But then it's like, okay, I get the files. Well, now what? And then if we're not technologically inclined, it might be a little bit of a learning curve, right? And all these things. And I think, you and us specifically, I've been around project management tools for a long time, from Basecamp to Monday to, Trello to Notion to whatever you call it.
My project management tool is whatever piece of paper I have in front of me.
Yeah, the analog fonts with his pen is like, hold on, I think that's in notebook number 7. But that obviously helps out a lot, but it also can be very, very, very overwhelming for a lot of people. I know when we first started with the volume of content that we produced, not only for the show but for the agency, right? We almost like invented like a language, like a code system to be able to find, name every single piece of content. And it has an original name, and it was like something that we had to teach the team. But we came up with it based on other systems that we've seen. So a lot of people don't want to go through that, right? And that's why sometimes they go to you to like, okay, all this process, all these steps that maybe I don't see ahead of time. Somebody like Joe can help us out. So with that in mind, like, what are some of the I guess friction points or things that people need to start looking at if they're getting into creating consistent content, right? Because today, I believe every single company, entrepreneur has to create and control their message online, and that has to be supported with a solid system on the back end, right? It's not just like, oh, I keep my videos in my phone and that's it. It has to be something that's solid, that's set up for growth, that's set up for a team down the road. What are some of the initial recommendations that you can share?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is make sure you're keeping track of this stuff somewhere, right? Because I think one of the things that kills consistency is sitting down at your keyboard or at your microphone and having no idea what you're going to write about or talk about that day. And so the first thing that I do, or the first thing I made sure I set up, which is also a really low barrier to entry because we all have phones now, is an easy way for me to capture ideas no matter where I am. And so like I have like I have the Notes app, but I also use the action button on my iPhone to bring up an app called Whisper Memo, which allows me to just kind of like word vomit into it, and then it transcribes it using AI.
Yeah.
And so anything like that, and I think the voice is really important because I'll get ideas in the shower or in the car, or when I have children on me, or I'm cooking dinner or something, and I don't want to lose that, right? And in fact, this morning, I'm the Home and School Association president for my children's school, and one of the things I have to do is give a speech at back to school night. And I was thinking about what story am I going to open up with? I don't really know this audience. We're all parents. Yeah. And no joke, in the shower, it all came, like the entire first third of the speech came to me, and so I shouted half of it into my phone, and then when I was ready and could sit in front of a computer, I typed out the first part of my speech, and I think if I didn't have a good system in place, I would have lost it. I would have sat down in front of a Google Doc later and been like, oh no, what was the story? What was the point I was trying to make? So I think if we're trying to figure out a good system starting point, someplace to capture your ideas is low hanging fruit, because you can use whatever's on your phone.
That's right. How many? Is that why all your notebooks are wet?
Because taking notes in the shower. Well, I need a waterproof notebook. No, actually, shout out to lazy.io. That's the one I use. I love that that tool. They have I think you would love it, honestly, Joe. I think you would absolutely love this tool. And they have kind of like what you just mentioned, an app on the phone where you just tap it and you can easily type down your idea or do a voice note and it transcribes it for you, and then it sends it back to your computer. And the whole thing is on context switching, right? Because a lot of people, when they have an idea, when they're working or they're consuming information, and they find something interesting that they want to grab as an idea, they have to close down the window, go somewhere else, open your notes, type them down, and that context switching kills you. I'm a hard victim of context switching. As soon as my attention goes somewhere else, I lost track of whatever I'm doing, right? So Lazy just makes it super easy to just grab ideas without having to switch tabs or go anywhere else. You just press a command on your computer, a little box pops up, you just write it down, and it puts it, in your inbox on the inside of the app. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think about a year ago, I watched this video of Ali Abdal, and it was his reading system, how he collects ideas from how he reads, right? And it was this collage of 5 different apps that all talk to each other, and then it was populating on a Notion database. And following that video, I went into I think you showed me that video, and then I recreated the same system for me. But then it was super interesting because I had to adapt my consumption to what he was saying in the video. My consumption was not the same as his consumption, right? I listened to a lot of books, right? He was reading on his tablet on a different app that I was not used to, and it was man, I have to adapt that. So that for me was friction point. So one point of caution, if you're gonna start looking into these type of things, is start recognizing too, how do you consume information? I watch a lot of YouTube videos. So on Lazy, for example, I liked it because you can put the YouTube video in there and it will give you a summary of things, and you can comment on that, or you can clip a different part of that video, and it's super interesting. So it's how do I consume that information? For podcast, I use an app called Snipped, and if you listen something.
Who told you about that app too?
You, bro.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
We're always on research mode, and then you're listening to a podcast, and let's say there's an audio bite that you really like, that you're oh man, I want to comment on this later. You can just, by a press of a button, it will snip it, and then you can zap that into whatever application you have for project management. So that data collection system is super interesting.
It's cool. It's cool.
It's really, really really cool because they're like, oh, I remember, so-and-so, Joe said this on his podcast. We can use that as part one of the episode that we're going to record today. And that removes so much friction from the creation process. So leaning on these tools and recognizing how do you consume content and how do you, collect it in your head is so important. And I think that's something that people don't realize when they start creating, because they'll have like 5 different ideas that they have in their head for like a year that they want to put out, and then when they put it out, they're like, oh,
yeah,
what else?
Right. Well, that's like, I get a lot of pushback when I say like have a good, like my stated goal for idea capture is I want to be able to shout into a room and have the idea captured, right? Like, no matter where I am.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of pushback that's like, well, if it's a good idea, it'll come back to me. And I'm like, no, it won't. Like, this could be like, you could be like, what if you were on your, I got the idea for my podcast on my honeymoon, right? And we were in Italy. And we had to like log into a hotel Wi-Fi, and it was like a .it domain. And I was like, oh, hey, I wonder if like how I built .it is purchased. And I bought it right there. Like your idea could be so contextual, or a story that happens to you that you may want to recount like a year from now, right? Going back to my HSA speech, I'm telling a story from 2nd grade.
Wow.
Like I'm gonna make an admission to this group of people that I haven't admitted to that many people about like how weird I was in 2nd grade. And like I just like, one day that story came back to me, and I put it in my like the stories folder of my notes app, because I was like, oh, this could be an interesting story one day.
Yeah.
So I think like thoughts, ideas, dreams, like you wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, I'll remember that in the morning, and then you're like, I have no idea. Right.
You're like,
all of that is so ephemeral.
You're like,
you need to
I had a good idea. It's gone.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm curious, Joe. So, because this could be a topic of itself, right? Like capturing ideas, organizing ideas, and then it's not just about having a whole bunch of ideas, because you need to use them for them to be effective, right?
Yeah, show your list of lazy of that you showed me the other day.
I have a lot of stuff that I need to go through, but I have a lot of stuff that is very organized too, and I have parentheses, because now I feel attacked in here, so of course I need to punch back. I have a system, I call it the idea system, which is ideate. So within my note-taking app is ideate, then draft, then edit and publish, and then archive. So I pretty much go, when I have an idea, I put it for content specific, I put it on the idea, and then I have my list of multiple ideas that I still haven't drafted, but I have them in there. Then I have my draft section, which is the ones that are 80% complete, right? They're 80% complete, about that I could publish them like that if I wanted to. They're on my draft page. And then on my edit and publish are the ones that I do editing before publishing them. And then once I usually E&A, edit, publish, and archive, I do it in the same take, right? Like, because once I edit them, I see if they're good, I publish them. If they're still on edit, that means I haven't published them, but I already did the editing, and I'm just coming back to kind of like reread it. And then once I publish, I just put it in archive, and that's it, right? It's kind of like that 4-step process. Close parentheses. So Joe, what I wanted to mention was, we can talk about it all day long, and that's part of the process at first. One of the important processes that people needs to set up. What would be the next critical process that you see that most people need to take action on, again, to get their time back?
Yeah, great question. Yeah. So let's say you've got your idea process down. Let's say this. Now it's time to organize and keep track of your episodes, right? So this is, specifically for podcasting for me, but this could be YouTube videos, it could be articles, whatever. You want to know, because if you're just like recording and putting out an episode in the same week, you're going to fall behind, right? You need to get ahead. And if you're getting ahead, it means you're recording multiple episodes and scheduling them, which means you need to know where each of those are in the process. This is one of the reasons I like Notion so much for this. Like Airtable was really good again, but like Notion, I find, has like better note taking for each record or row.
Yeah.
But I have in my planner, you can use whatever you want, Trello, Notion, Airtable, whatever, ClickUp, whatever works best for you. Yeah.
Not paper.
Not paper.
Fancy.
You can't automate paper, right? I think I'll tell you, I've got like fountain pens within arm's reach, right? I love pen and paper.
Yeah.
I would say Ryan Holiday would argue that statement.
Ryan Holiday can't say it. On Monday, I was like, Fonzie, can you please bring, the batteries for this camera that we need? I'm like, yeah, I'll bring them later today. I'm sure he wrote it down somewhere.
No, I have not. That's why.
Okay, sure, you say that. And then today's like, hey, Fonzie, we're still waiting for those batteries. So, dang it. So, anyways, Joe. I'm Team Joe right now. I'm Team Tech.
I love it. I got paper all around me, but I got to put it right. I'll tell you what. I went to Podcast Movement. I had a little notebook with me. Because I don't like being on my phone during talks and stuff like that, writing notes. That notebook is somewhere, and I'm like, I know I wrote down some good ideas,
and some follow-ups, some names.
Yeah, I'll never find like hopefully it didn't go through the wash, right?
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
So I think you want to have a central place on your computer. To organize all of these things, because you can track status, you can easily pass things off to your team, and you can automate, right? So if when I change the status of one of my episodes from recorded to needs editing, my editor gets an email, and then my editor brings the episode back to me and the status changes to ready for schedule, and my VA gets an email. So a lot of this stuff, I set these systems up, and now after I record the intro, I don't see that episode again. My editor gets it. He makes the video. He makes the audio. We've been working together for a long time, so I don't need to check what he's doing. I trust him. And then my VA gets the email, and she schedules it. Yeah. And the next time I see the episode is when it's in my podcast feed. I'm like, hey, that's the episode that I expected to come out today based on my planner.
Yeah. I love it. I think, for all the do-it-yourselves there, like once you start going through that rabbit hole, I guess, like it has no end, to the point that, on my side, I've thought, okay, what is a system that I can literally record from my phone or my device, something that I said or video, and then you press a button and then it gets processed and published, right? Obviously it might be minimum editing, right? But it could happen. I mean, there are tools there that it could potentially happen. And maybe that's a cool experiment that we can do with you, Joe, where, hey, I need to publish. I've had this concept of like the 4 a.m. podcast, right? Something that has me personally helped me be consistent in general has been this show. Like we've done 500, I think this is 518th episode, right? Like,
wow.
Other than living, this has been the most consistent thing that we've done in our lives, right? And it's like, okay. And there's certain elements that have helped us get to that point, right? Like the fact that we love it, the fact that there's a system behind that supports it, that is organized, like all these things that we've talked about earlier, but right? And then, I'm like, okay, well, I want to be able to be up at 4 a.m. And one of the factors that, helped me do this show like that consistently has been make it public and publish something. And it's like, I noticed that that's an element in my life that helps me do things. When I say publicly that I'm going to do something and we go do it. So, okay, the 4 a.m. podcast. But I don't want to edit at 5 a.m. I just want to say the thing at 4 a.m. and be up and do my thing and then press a button and then that gets published later that day or the next day. How cool would that be, right? And it's just like, as we dream as creators and these systems, like then we can start diving into make it more effective. And I think a lot of people stop there, maybe because it's lack of capacity, overwhelm, lack of slack, or skill, right? So I think like people like you, Joe, that are there in the industry at the forefront doing things like this, I think it's super important to at least start the conversation. I was like, okay, how can I make this process that may take me 3 hours, how can I make it 1 hour, right? This process that's 1 hour, how can I make it 30 minutes? And then you're going to start gaining so much time back and it's going to be so effective that then you can move and make decisions that do more things faster. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. I just want to agree wholeheartedly on that. I mean, you need to start somewhere.
Yeah. So okay, number 2, you mentioned organize and keep track of content. Number 1, keep track of ideas and capture them, right? Then from there, keep track of the content itself, right? And then the process, like, what would you say step 3 will look like after that is?
Yeah, I think so. I think if we are talking to, people who are making media, hire an editor, right? Again, the number one thing I hear is like, editing takes me so long, and I'm like, editing should take you 0 seconds, right? Like someone else should be doing the editing, and I know that's like a hard cost, but they say for every it takes 4 minutes of post-production for every minute of content. So if you're recording a 25-minute nope, that's bad math. If you're recording a 15-minute episode, it's going to take you an hour of post-production, right? Which means that if you're most people record closer to an hour, we're looking at half a day on editing and post-production. Like I am confident that my editor, it takes him about half the time of the recording to edit, because he has a system. And then he uses Descript. I clap my hands when I need him to edit something, so it's easy for him to find that. But he has this whole process in place. He has it dialed in. I don't need to be like, oh man, I breathed like too hard there, right? Or like finding the right. Every time I try to use a noise gate, it's either not aggressive enough or too aggressive. Yeah. I don't have that knowledge to like find the perfect noise gate setting for me, or like the combo of noise gate and compressor. My editor does, right?
Yeah.
So I would say the third step is going to look different for everybody, but it is look at the things that eat up your time that are not inside your area of expertise.
Yeah.
And get them off of your plate.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can tell my brother wholeheartedly agrees with you, because I can bet he'd have no idea what a noise gate or a compressor are.
Okay. Well, that yes. Fonzie told me like these like 4 steps that I memorize, and I do it perfectly every single time, and it comes out incredible.
He's like, bro, let me record this real quick, right? Because he edited something like a while back for one of the clients, and I'm listening to it, and I'm like, dude, like this thing is not even leveled, like the client, like.
No, but it sounds great. I'm like, clearly, who the system guys is.
I'm like, production. The guest sounds so. I'm like, here, look, let me teach you how to level this thing. So I go on, and he's like, he's like a 60-year-old putting his phone out. He's like, let me record this so I can remember it.
I recorded on Loom, and Loom has a great tool that actually tells you step by step what happens in the video. Like you can create an SOP out of Loom. Mm-hmm. That's my operator mind going, and I'm like, this has got great SOP, Fonzie. Thank you.
Yeah, Sunny. But I do agree, though. I do agree as well as for hiring an editor, right? And it's not, you said it's a cost. I would argue it's more an investment, right? Because again, you're getting your time back, and then it's not about, well, I'm getting my time back. Some people might, but it's not, I'm getting my time back to just go and lay down at the beach. Like you as a running your business, you're going to be, I'm getting my time back to do revenue relating activities potentially, right? Hopefully, getting on phone calls, working with clients, etc. So it is an investment.
Right. And so you asked me earlier too, like what has changed? I focused on the technology. Something else that's changed that actually Sarah Koenig mentioned in an interview with The Guardian recently is that the competition is so much more stiff now than it was in 2014, 2016, even 2018.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff competing for our attention. And so I think a lot of people say, hey, people want to hear the raw, unedited conversation, which is not true. And I'm not going to do this, and we're not going to prepare at all, and we'll just release the conversation, because they don't have time to do anything else. But if they take these things off their plate, they take 4 hours per episode, or even 2 hours per episode of editing off their plate. They can take one of those hours and do a little bit of research and outline the episode and create better content.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, no matter what growth lever you try, Facebook ads, podcast swaps, whatever, if you don't have good content, people aren't going to stick around.
Yeah. It reminds me of like remember that lady in that conference that she was so angry that we were talking about a high volume of content, and they were it's like this discussion happening. I was like, no, you need to post about 3 times a week, and we're in the school of like, you need to be there as much as possible, right? Like, 3 times a day. And people are like, what? And after that interaction, we are convinced that is because of a lack of capacity and being able to do it, right? Because like, okay, if that current thought is like, okay, if I take an hour to publish a day because I plan my video, I record the video, I edit the video, and then I put it out there the same day, of course it's going to take a ton of time. But then if you reframe your process to where like, okay, what is the type of video that we're doing? Like, how are we creating this? Like, do I have a team or do I have an editor that can do this? Now all of a sudden capacity increases way more, and you can start testing. And I think we're publishing maybe 1 or 2 clips a day right now, and it could be more, it could be less, but the more that we publish, the more happens, right? Like, it's like the more reach, the more people we get to connect with, and so on and so on. So and you see people like big influencers like Gary Vee or Grant Cardone, right? Like, they're always pushing those things, and on their end it doesn't look like it has been like a negative effect. There's so much stuff out there that's gonna find their way. So it's like that belief that we might have, like, oh no, I'm gonna cop it out, and it might be just tied down to the fact that we don't know how to get it effective in our processes to be able to put that output. I have an example. Like, every time we either travel, either with a family or we've gone to an event, I've taken the camera to record like a vlog style video. That's all sitting in the hard drive, is because, well, first, we don't have an editor that edits vlog style stuff, and we haven't done the due diligence to go hire somebody like that. And then like, I'm just gonna edit the first one. Well, they're just sitting there. That's what happens to a lot of people. It's like we have this idea, we get the footage, and then we're like, oh man, like, when am I gonna actually sit down and do this thing? Or I need to go hire somebody, and then can I hire them? Why haven't we hired them? Like, what's the purpose of this? So I think that's so valuable that you brought in that conversation here. Thank you, man.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, the reason I'm in the line of work I'm in now is because I had a panic attack in 2020. Like, something forced my hand, right? My wife is a nurse. 2020 obviously was the pandemic, so she was working a lot. We just had our second kid, and they're not in school. I'm self-employed, so I'm watching them, but my business is suffering. My podcast is suffering, and about 40% of my income was coming from podcast sponsorships at that time. And it just got to me one day. I had a full-on panic attack. I was like sitting on my kitchen, like leaning up against my fridge, like crying. And my 3-year-old daughter comes up to me with a bottle of water and says, "It's okay, Daddy. It's gonna be okay." Yeah. And like, I'm never gonna let that happen again. Where my child, I mean my kid, when I'm like 70, will probably have to take care of me, or 80. Yeah. But like, my child has to take care of me. And the next day, I put in a better system with my editor. I hired a VA, and I automated as much as I possibly, I'll say over the next week, as much as I possibly could. And if you're looking at, well, did that work? Were there results? Our third was born a year later, and I took an entire month off of work. Wow. To spend time with my family. So incredible. I don't want people, I definitely don't want anybody to be forced to do that. And so that's why I'm doing what I do today, so I can help, especially parents, take things off of their plate.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I resonate so much. Lucas started soccer practices, next Thursday in his new school, and it's like, man, like, going there and watch him, like the fact, and that conversation happened, right? Because it's not just the production aspect, it's any other aspect of the business, right? The outreach, the conversations, the calls, the coaching calls, the sales calls, whatever that looks like, right? And it's being able to adapt it. And sometimes like we're so in it, right, doing the thing, and we're like in this like wheel that doesn't stop. And I I relate because a lot of people might feel that way. You know, definitely at times we feel that way, and it's, you know, taking a second step back. I'm like, okay,
I never feel that way.
sure. I know. I always catch you watching Arsenal videos. I clearly. Come on, boys.
And you know, when you're self-employed or when you're a business owner, like, sometimes that's going to have to happen, right?
Yeah.
I'm working on a course for LinkedIn Learning, and like, there's a day where I'm just gonna have to like hunker down, and I try to record the whole course in a day for like consistency and continuity purposes.
Yeah.
And like, sometimes you have to do that, right? But by and large, like, my measure of success is, can I leave my desk for the day, like, without having to plan it ahead of time to spend time with my family? And most of the time, that answer is yes.
Yeah.
And I consider myself very lucky for that because, you know, like you said, I take myself out of the process and I look at everything that's going on and I say, where can I remove myself?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great question for people to ask in a recurring basis, right? That they might not be doing it because you're just so into everything. I'm curious though, you know, and I know we're getting close here to the end, but after all that, you get the editor, right? Let's say you have some process for distribute also. Do you have any automated processes for growing your podcast as well?
This is the hardest part, right? Because growth is going to look different for everybody, and growth levers are going to look different for everybody. I would essentially say that reducing the amount of time you can spend on everything else means that you can spend those hours on creating good content and growing your content. I have systems for that, right? Like, I'll do every quarter or so. Well, I mean, more often than that now, thanks to Podmatch, right? I have a system for reaching out and pitching podcast swaps or trailer swaps. That is still, I think, one of the best ways to grow your podcast because you're finding lookalike audiences. This is precipitated on the fact that you have good content and you know who your audience is, right? So those are like, once you free up your time, figure out who your audience is and who you help and focus on making really good content. And then on the growth side of things, that's when you start telling people about it. Do podcast interviews, do podcast swaps. And, you know, I would say for social media, because people are like, how do I like make easy clips? Video clips, maybe you guys might disagree with me on this, but I think that video clips are not they're a great way to stay in front of people. Mm-hmm. But I think like having a short form video clip on TikTok and then be like, and go listen to the rest on my podcast is kind of like walking up to somebody who is like walking their dog and then saying, hey, run a marathon with me right now. They'll be like, I'm wearing jeans. I just ate. I have my dog. Like, I can't run a marathon right now.
Yeah.
I think same vibes, right? But if it's like, hey, you seem to like to be outside and like move your legs. Hey, let's keep talking. Maybe we can train for like a half marathon. Yeah. Like maybe that's something we can do in the future.
100%. I love that analogy, man. And that has been a conversation. You know, I'm more fan of clips than Fonzie is, I think, or at least our clips. And again,
I think there's a way to do it. Definitely, they have their purpose. I personally.
Thanks for interrupting me.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. There are very little clips that I'm like, ooh, I gotta listen to that, and they're mostly trailers, right? Like the Diary of a CEO, they do a great job at putting those trailers out. But just like a regular clip,
if we get in the nitty gritty and the science of clipping, I guess like that would be a great video. The science of clipping, like you said, like we, you know, internally with our team we have different tiers, right? Tier A, Tier B, Tier C type of deal. Tier C, like more basic things, and not only our production team, but things that we've seen online, right? Like you said, Diary of a CEO, the trailers, super engaging, right? Like every time I see one, I'm like, well, work of art. I need to listen to this thing, right? But you're also in the mindset of like, they're pitching me something. Like your podcast is also a product. And like you say, like if we're scrolling through and the clips is there, great for, you know, keep in people's sites, right? And we've seen it at events, like when we go to live events and people are in our network and they've seen the content, they're like, man, I see you guys everywhere. It's that impression, right? And it compounds, and then it just gives us like an opening to continue a conversation, for example. So I think that's like really valuable if you have a system that you don't depend just on that to promote the podcast. But also I think it's a great tool to find good indicators, right? Because obviously, we might think what might resonate with the audience, but we don't really know until we put it out there. Just recently we had a clip with one of our studio clients, Lou. He's like older dude, experienced dude. He's very polarizing in the things that he says, and we were trying to do a content podcast, but he went all political, and like we were trying to like do this dynamic, and his clip went like ballistic, like 10x what all the other clips did, and he brought a ton of subscribers to the channel, right? And it's like, oh, that's interesting. And then but now we have to see why these people subscribing, like what resonated with them, like, right? And then can we relate to that? Is that the ideal? So these data points now allow us to make decisions for future content. So I think, like, to me personally, I think that's super valuable too, apart from like the views or transferring to the podcast, because podcast listeners are gonna listen to podcasts. A YouTube short consumer is not gonna, maybe they don't even know what a podcast is. Maybe their podcast is the YouTube video, right? So I love that we can make that distinction and separating a little bit of those types of content and what the function of those things are.
Yeah, they do have a purpose for sure, and like, I get that. I like what you mentioned, and I think that is actually the best purpose for the clips, which is testing your ideas. Is like the Hormozy framework, where he's like, all my ideas, I just put them out on Twitter. Well, all the ideas that you talk about on podcasts, you just put them out as clips, and then you see what resonates with people, and then you're like, oh, let me double down on that message, and then you can create a specific piece of content on that one thing, right? But for promoting the show, me personally, I'm like, do something that actually promotes the podcast. Like, people are not dumb, they're very educated right now. Like, they're gonna know if you're trying to sell them something. You're trying to sell them to listen to the show, right? So obviously big personalities like Hormozy or Diary of a CEO, they're more recognizable. I see a trailer, I'm like, oh, I know it's a podcast, all this stuff. Mm-hmm. But for somebody that, they might not be as recognizable as them, it might be a little bit challenging to get that, even if you do a trailer, right? So I think a good question to ask yourself is, what is the purpose of my content? Like, how do I, am I going to create clips? Yes. Okay. What is the purpose of it? Is the purpose to, test my ideas? Is the purpose just to start conversations and then I can nurture those conversations? Or is the purpose of it to try to drive traffic to my podcast, right? Which I believe is actually a challenging one.
Yeah. And I think what you want to do, right, is also ask, am I making content for the platform, right? Mm-hmm. Because like, for a long time, right, you would get these I'm going to show my age here. You would get like VHS tapes or DVDs, and
what are those?
Message, okay. Yeah, right. Well, kids, before we could just download whatever we wanted at any time.
Hey, not gonna lie, by the way, there, before you do that, apparently there's a trend that I've seen online is like these new parents canceling subscription-based services, buying a DVD player, and just buying old school cartoons and old school animation things for their kids, because like the pacing and the energy and the thing is so much different now, and it's limited, and the kids can just like put it on and whatever. So anyways, close parenthesis.
Oh, that's so interesting. That's like
fact.
Yeah, love that. But you would see this message, right, that says like, this film has been formatted for DVD, right, or whatever, right, or for TV screens or whatever, right. So keep that in mind when you're making content too. Usually, if I'm putting out something short form to promote one of my podcast episodes, or at least to get people into my universe and listening to my podcast, I will, after I do an interview or after I do an episode, open up my phone and record a separate video. Talking is a lot easier for me than like, finding something that I already said and clipping it, right? So I'm going to record it. It's going to look natural, right? The TikTok crowd likes that. Those videos look more authentic. And then I'll say something like, hey, if you want to learn more, like there's a link in the description, or join my mailing list, right? Or click the link in my, whatever the call to action is for the platform.
Yeah.
I like getting people onto my mailing list, right? Because from my mailing list, I could say like, hey,
welcome.
You like this content?
Yeah.
I talk for 20 straight minutes about this thing, right? Go over here and have a listen.
Yeah. So cool. I just imagine like for every single clip of the podcast, just like that little blue screen. It's like, this video has informative for short form content.
That would be good. Yeah, essentially.
Hey, for a certain crowd, the nostalgia factor will be real high on.
Yeah, just like,
I think it would be a good pattern interrupt too. Yeah, bringing nostalgia. We can test it out.
Open up with that Pizza Hut video of the kid playing baseball. I don't know if you guys remember that, but that was at the beginning of every single VHS tape I watched.
Oh, really?
Like ages like 5 to 7.
That's funny.
There's a clip I saw no long ago. It's like these two parents showing the kids like a VHS tape, and they're like, "Oh, the trailers," and they're like, the kids are like, "What are these?" And it's like, it's like all the movies that were about to come out on VHS too. It's like, can we skip this? And they're like, no, you can just forward real fast. And
those were the best trailers. It's like, this summer coming to your local screen, and you're like, yes.
Local blockbuster.
Can we also talk about how like people are worried that their content is gonna like be outdated or not evergreen? Those trailers on a VHS tape got almost immediately outdated.
100%.
Like if you bought the VHS tape after July 1994, like that was immediately out of date.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a good point right there. That's
why they came out with dynamic ads. Yeah, this is like, how do we solve this? We're wasting all this money putting this stuff out here.
Oh man, so cool, dude. Joe, today conversation has been so fun. Yeah, definitely second time we have. I can't wait for the call that we booked with you next week, which by the way, we're gonna leave all Joe's linked. I know that you have a super cool thing that you can show with your camera. You want to show it now?
Oh yeah, I can bring up my lower third here. It's like mirrored, I think, right?
Yeah. So for those listening, podcastworkflows.com/profit, and you can check out. We're gonna just leave it right here below as well. You can go click it.
I want to add is podcast without an S at the end, and then workflows with an S at the end.com.
I know my accent.
/profit.
Yes.
Because when I first typed it, I put it backwards. Podcast workflow. And it didn't take me anywhere. So
workflows for your one
podcast.
There we go. So we'll leave the link so you don't have to type it. You can just scroll and tap it.
Have you seen Kill Tony lately? No.
Nope.
It's like the Madison Square Gardens. There's a joke at the end instead of gardens.
It's okay, guys. It's okay. So I guess that happens when you become a dad. Joe was the only one that laughed out here. So
let's go, Joe. Yes, you're my people. Join the club, Fonzie. Join the club. Anyways, guys. I'm excited. Anything else you want to add, Fonz?
Just thank you, Joe. It was a lot of fun. I feel like we still get to cover a few things, but again, we'll bring you back up. We'll talk more about it. But again, the conclusion here is that people do need process in place for the different stages of the creative process, right? Pre-production, production, and then distribution and promotion. There's different things. It doesn't look the same for everybody, right? So I will encourage you listening right now to connect with Joe. He offers calls, right? Coaching. He has resources. Go on in his email list. He sends you a resource as soon as you go in there. So go check him out. You can build your own process and you can save a lot of time. So you can be with your kids, or if you don't have kids like me, you can go and, hang out and do other stuff.
Like fishing.
And playing soccer.
Joe, anything else you want to add before we head out?
I just kind of piggybacking off of what Fonzie said, right? If you go to podcastworkflows.com/profit, it's my 40 plus automations database. That will show you what's possible, right? It'll give you ideas, and then you could start thinking about, oh, hey, I usually just schedule calls by going back and forth in email. There's this tool that helps me. So I would say like download the database. Don't get overwhelmed and feel like you have to implement all of them. Just look and be like, oh, that's cool. I wonder if I could do something like that. Like pick one that really calls to you and implement that first.
Oh, I love it. How I'm going to tackle is like, what is my most time demanding problem that I have based off the list, and go check that one out first. Hopefully.
How do I automate my brother?
I've got 3 younger brothers. I've been thinking about that for a long. It's an impossible task.
Yeah.
Notion can't solve that one. Get to work on that one, Notion.
Get to work on that one, guys. With that said, thank you so much for tuning to the Content is Profit podcast. Go ahead and follow the show in your favorite podcasting platform and on social media at BizBrosCo.
That is Ranif Joe here, help you save hundreds of thousands of hours. Please don't forget to share this episode, and of course, don't forget to leave a 5-star review. See ya.
Bye, guys. Sweet.
That was so much fun, man. Oh, Joe, where do you got? Oh, there you are.
Where?
Oh no, you got.